welcome back. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I am talking about something really, really important and something that is actually very close to my heart in emotional intelligence, working with families and kids. And this is all about using consequences and or punishments with our kids. I think this is such an important topic. It's such a massive area of often actually like misinformation that parents have now and that they're using with their kids, but also it stems from a lot of how we were raised when we were younger, what consequences or punishments we endured or were given, and that helps shape us, or it has created some of those rules and those beliefs and habits and things that we have now. But I want to make it clear that when I'm talking about consequences, punishments, they are different from having boundaries with your kids, and I will get to that at the end of the video. I want to make a special mention about boundaries, but today I'm focusing on how and why we need to be really, really careful when we are setting consequences for our kids and their behavior. So we're looking at like unwanted behavior or inappropriate behavior, hurtful behavior, and things like that, dangerous behavior. So often as parents, we feel like we need to and we want to have consequences for those types of behaviors, and that's what I want to talk about today. So I'm going to be reading from some of my notes because I don't want to forget anything, so that is why I'm sometimes kind of checking as I'm going. I don't want to leave anything out because this is a huge topic. So we have often been conditioned in growing up to see children's behavior as wrong or bad or naughty and something that needs resolving or suppressing with consequences. Okay, this is not accurate. This is not true. Behavior in itself is not wrong. It cannot be wrong. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to point out. Behavior is not ever wrong, and I'll talk about it being a signal. So that's our first kind of mindset shift. Also, on the surface level, challenging behaviors often frustrate us as parents, and often we're unaware of our triggers. We don't realize what triggers us in the moment. We're not aware of our habits and our patterns of behavior and things that tick us or push our buttons. And this leads us to have that feeling of needing to do something in response to a behavior. So giving consequences, basically. So, you know, I'm talking to parents, but also educators and people working with kids as well. I used to work with kids, so I kind of come at it from both angles. And I feel like often we unconsciously feel that kids must learn. The child needs to be taught, otherwise they'll turn out bad, or they'll never learn what is appropriate versus inappropriate behavior. This is actually not true. They are not going to learn the difference between these types of behaviors and how their behaviors impact others. Then they're not going to fail to learn this if we don't have strong consequences or punishments. So that's another huge point, and again a bit of a mindset shift. So when we are unconscious parents, and by that I mean we're not intentional, we're not conscious, aware, deliberate, intentional with our actions and our parenting. When we're not intentional, then we get caught up in this trap of interpreting behaviors automatically. So we see them as even pathological, like I said before, bad or wrong. And in reality, they're not. Behavior is a signal. It's a way of communicating. I can't cope with this, it's too much, I haven't learned the skill yet, I can't deal with this and I need help, or this is overloading me. Anyway, lots of those kind of signals. And really behaviors also, when we see these behaviors from our kids, they're opportunities to learn for the child. They're opportunities for us to teach and coach and guide our kids. So also consequences that we feel like we want to give as parents often come for this desire for us to fit the mold or to keep up with the Joneses. If we're around extended family or friends, I've worked with parents who say, I feel like in that moment people were waiting for me to punish or give my child a consequence and sort of teach them that behavior is inappropriate. So it's really that feeling of wanting to sometimes there's that extra pressure, which I totally get, but we have to be aware of that. So another really important point to note is that consequences are actually often given in the heat of the moment without too much thought. They are often without clear, rational planning. Sometimes they're also given without genuine empathy for the child and what they're going through or what they're struggling with, because consequences make us feel like we're doing our job as a parent and we are raising our kids in the right way. So often when we give out consequences to our child, we are actually unwittingly misinterpreting their behaviour as intentional, as though they know better or they could do better, they could have made a better choice in the moment. And here's a massive side note on that, is that if the child could have made a better choice in that moment, let's say it was to do with sharing with a sibling or something and they snatched the item or the toy, if they could have made a better choice in that moment, they would have. Let that kind of sink in. When a person can make and is able to make a good choice and be patient and ask for a turn and not snatch and share, they do. When they can do it, they will. When they haven't made a better choice, i.e. use an inappropriate or unwanted behaviour, it is because in that moment, usually for many reasons, they could not. They just couldn't get to that point where they could control that impulse, they could have that empathy for the other child wanting the toy, and they could be patient and wait their turn. So think of Ross Greene's beautiful axiom, which is kids do well if they can. Full stop. I love that. So also I kind of think that we often forget that giving consequences actually has an impact on our child's brain, and it can place them into a stress response, potentially a fight or flight mode or fear mode, which is the exact opposite of the zone we want them to be in, or the place we want them to be in, to be receptive and to learn and to understand what we're trying to teach them. So it's actually counterintuitive often for us to give these harsh consequences or punishments for our child to learn what to do and what not to do, because it puts them in that space of like, this thing's going to be taken away from me, or we're not going to go to McDonald's on the weekend, or I won't have my iPad for a week. So this kind of leads into my next point of consequences are often aimed at removing things from the child that they really enjoy or really love, or maybe even separating, having that distance between a parent or a caregiver. Doesn't actually teach the child what appropriate or the desired behaviour is. It simply teaches them that when they're struggling to make the right choice, when they can't reach our set expectation, or when they can't demonstrate a skill like sharing I was just talking about, then we're going to make them suffer, or we're going to detach from them. And that's like what I love, a beautiful quote. Another quote is, when our kids are at their most unlovable is when they need love the most. I love that quote. Such a good reminder to help me from getting so triggered in the moment when my kids do something, have an unwanted or challenging behavior. And it just reminds me that they need this love and support and guidance when they can't get there on their own. So something else I want to point out is that consequences often miss the purpose of coaching our kids on how to act and what's appropriate, what's okay and what's not, what's hurtful, what's dangerous, and it actually fails to teach communication or emotional intelligence skills. That's when we kind of just give out those like quick, big consequences. Well, you've done this, so go to your room. So at worst, this is gonna sound giant and extreme, but at worst, when we give out a consequence or a punishment for an unwanted behavior, essentially the message that our child is receiving is, when your developing upstairs brain fails you and you make a wrong choice, I will be really disappointed in you. I will need to make you suffer. I will take something away from you, or I will separate and detach from you and put you out there on your own. So that's at worst. At best, our child doesn't actually know what to do next time or how to solve the problem if that issue comes up again. So I want to give a quick word on punishments. There are so many problems with punishments, and some big ones for me are they fracture that connection with us, the parent or the educator. They don't consider what is driving the behavior. I often talk about what's underneath the iceberg. I've done another video on that. What is driving or causing that behavior underneath? And also that punishments usually don't teach our child what to do instead of what not to do. So some other problems with punishments that I see when we try to sort of shape our kids' behavior using a punishment is that it usually becomes less effective each time the punishment is used. And I've worked with parents who have said, I have removed every item that my child loves and enjoys and nothing changes. Their behavior gets worse. I'm like, yeah, it's going to. So punishments are also often usually poorly timed, unrelated, maybe even irrelevant. And as I mentioned before with the McDonald's example, this is like, because you hit your brother, we're not going to McDonald's on Saturday for lunch. Doesn't teach anything to the child about how to interact with their brother. Last thing is that punishments also often risk escalating the situation or the behavior further because it can put the child into this stress response, that fight or flight that I talked about before. Okay, so one of the most important points for me personally is that when we punish our child, we actually create this disconnect, this detachment, and even feelings of shame in our child, even though we think and we feel like we're doing the right thing to help them grow into kind, respectful adults one day, but we are actually putting those feelings of shame and embarrassment and maybe even fear into our child, and that leads them to draw conclusions about themselves as a person rather than seeing their actions or behaviors as the unwanted thing. And I've seen a lot of kids with negative self-talk saying, I'm the worst, I'm just naughty, that's how I am, I can never get it right, this is just me, I'm a bad kid. I've seen that and it breaks my heart. So the last thing I was going to say is, as I mentioned right at the start, the consequences, punishments and things like that and boundaries are very different. I am not saying, okay, we shouldn't have any consequences, punishments or boundaries. I am saying that we do not need to punish our kids 1000%. However, I'm not saying that we don't need to have boundaries or that we should have zero boundaries for our kids and be permissive and just letting our kids do whatever they want, because we know that that's not going to create healthy, kind, resilient, respectful kids or adults one day. So yes, we 100% need boundaries. What I want to do with this video is really just help you guys to kind of take this in and have a few moments to deeply reflect on how you navigate those big challenging moments with your kids when they have those behaviors that you see as triggering or unwanted or inappropriate or hurtful. I am not advocating for having no boundaries. That is a separate topic, separate talk, separate video. We definitely need to have limits and rules at home. We know they're critical for a child's healthy development. So there are many ways in which we can help our kids to learn appropriate, safe, healthy behaviors versus inappropriate, dangerous, hurtful, harmful behaviors. But as I mentioned, at times, because we are beautifully human, we can get carried away by some of these consequences that sometimes are actually punishments in disguise, or unclear consequences that are not relevant, that are not helping our child actually learn what behavior is appropriate in that situation. Okay, so if this is something that you guys want to talk about more or need some support on, please reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. I would love you to chat with me about what's going on at your place and how we can help work on this stuff together. It is what I love. So thank you guys for watching, and let me know what you think. Put down something in the comments there. I would love you to, even if you disagree with some of these points, even if you think that doesn't resonate with me, I don't understand it, put it down. Let's have a conversation about it. And as always, please, I would love it if you could like the video and then subscribe to my channel so that you guys can catch future videos as they go up. They're all around emotional intelligence, family, kids, parenting, all that good stuff. All right, thanks guys. I'll see you next time.